Splash expanded shots collision detection with players to make it easy. What? Why are they... Oh, wait. That says sploosh. So here we are with the mid-season patch. This is the one that's going to focus the most on balance updates. So this one's pretty important. This one is going to determine a lot about how the game plays. And there are certain things that probably need to be addressed. Here are my predictions that I've made before. I think they might touch Stamper. I think Stamper has been like ubiquitous enough recently that they might be aware of it. Japan has been a bit slow on the uptake on Pencil. And another thing that's worth thinking about is that the theory that Oatmeal Dome came out with this on Twitter, that they think this patch will have no information from Worlds whatsoever, because it takes a good amount of time to do QA testing and finalize and polish things after the changes are made, and that they would not have had that time between Worlds and now. So all of the changes are based on previous information. So that's something to bear in mind. Probably not based on what we saw at Worlds. I'm sure they'll make other decisions based on what we saw at Worlds, but not this particular patch. They've needed to nerf Pencil for quite a while, and I don't know that they have the information that they need to nerf Pencil. So I'm not I'm not holding my breath about that. It's possible that maybe they touch Cooler. I think that's probably the way that Pencil sees a nerf, if it sees a nerf at all. But I'm not holding my breath on that one. We might see Stamper. We might see Stamper get nerfed. That wouldn't be necessarily a bad thing. I think the weapon would still have its identity with being just a little bit weaker. But maybe they touch Zuka. Maybe they touch like Squeezer. Probably not Squeezer. We haven't seen a ton of Squeezer, and I don't know that they would know that it's so strong. But Zuka nerf would be really solid. And obviously buffing anything that's weak, which there are so many things that are weak in this game that a buff would just be massive for, and that they just haven't touched for such a long time. So let's see what it is that they're doing. Okay, so they've changed Undertow, and we knew that they were going to change it. That was something that they had already announced, but we don't know how they're going to change it, so for the time being, that means nothing to us. Main weapon changes. So we'll just go one at a time here. Splash. Expanded shots collision detection with players to make it easy. What? Why are they... Oh, wait. That says sploosh, not splash. I was going to be so mad. Sploosh. Sploosh-o-matic. The silly one. Okay. Jeez. That would not have been a good start, but yeah, fair. Give it something, you know. It is a weaker weapon right now. Is that what's weak about it? No, but why not? Splattershot Pro. This is something that needs some attention. It could use a little bit of a buff. Max damage. Ooh, max damage increase. Wait, does that combo with different stuff now? That's interesting. So it goes from comboing with 68 to comboing with 55. That doesn't make a difference with comboing with Snipe Rider. What does 55? Explo shots, I guess? Not that that's incredibly relevant. What's the damage on Zuka shots? On the Zuka indirects. 53 on the splash damage. It's so close to comboing with that, but it doesn't quite get there. What's 55? Does this make a difference? I mean, it's definitely not bad for shredding objects, presumably. I don't know what the implications of that are going to be. That is a really interesting buff, but I don't think it hits, like, that much of a threshold where it would matter. Like, what? Maybe there's something that does 10 damage and it lets you two-shot now? As opposed to needing... It would have been 17? I don't know. That was... This weapon... It's like right on the verge of having some kind of identity for itself. And as soon as something pushes it over the edge, it's going to suddenly jump and become potentially viable. And I like that weapon, so I'm curious to see where that point is, and I might mess around with this a little bit and see if I think anything of it. Nova, reduced shot spread. That is sorely needed. That is not the only buff that it needs by any means, but this is one of the things that is absolutely god-awful about this weapon right now, and they are 8%. I don't know how much of a difference that's going to make. I'll have to try it out and see what I think. It's probably still not a good main weapon. I can all but guarantee you that, but this is a step in the right direction, so this is good. H3, max damage increase. Doing this for a couple of these kinds of weapons here that we're not seeing a lot of right now. I, again, wonder what sort of impact this really has. Because the big thing that's out competing these right now is Squeezer. And Squeezer just has so much more range. And it's still 3 shots. And, like, these still 3-shot. So, does that extra bit of damage really matter? Does it really give you a reason to run these over the Squeezer when it doesn't change TTK? When I'm struggling to think of what else this would combo with now that it didn't combo with earlier. These are really small adjustments unless there's something that I'm missing. So I'm not confident that that has a huge impact. Again, object damage matters. Being able to shred things like a Rainmaker Shield, Splash Walls, Big Bubblers, like getting rid of all of those is good. Just, I don't know if it's enough that Squeezer's going to be any less used for this. Luna's increased the radius of the ink splatter at the point of impact with terrain or when detonated midair. A paint buff, a big paint buff for the Luna Blaster. Radius increase, so that means it's like doubled, right? Because it's on like every side of it. That's pretty big. Like, one of the biggest weaknesses of this weapon is its ability to paint for itself. Now, granted, it's still a very slow fire rate, and that's still going to have a really nasty impact on it, but that is a good... Like, I like... These buffs are in the right direction, and that tends to be the case in a lot of these patches, where they have the right idea of what direction to move it, and they're just scared to move it very fast. So it's still not going to get to the point of, like, immediate viability or anything. It's going to take years to get there at the pace that they buff them at. So this is definitely good for the weapon, and Luna players will love it. Will this see more use from people who aren't currently playing Luna? I have no idea. My guess would be no, but that is a big number, so who knows? I'd have to ask a Luna player. Okay. S-Blast. Increased the radius of the 50 explosion for long flight range shots by about 11%. So that's the low damage version of it. Okay, so this is addressing the AoE on the long range, which has always been the weakest part of the weapon. Like, the reason that people run Range Blaster over this right now is that you can't do blaster things, basically. You can't hit around corners or ledges. The shots are just too honest to be worth giving up so much in terms of paint and fire rate at that range. It's almost like a line of sight weapon because of how bad that AoE is. So with a decent radius extension on that, that could change things. I need to visualize like how big that is and whether that really has enough of an impact to make it usable in that way again. But that's an interesting buff, and like S Blast is already, close enough to viability that might be something that would push it over the edge. We'll have to see. Paintbrush. This is something that I've thought needed buffing. Increased inking width when holding ZR to ink by moving forward. This is not the part of the weapon that needed to be touched. Shortened the time before ink starts recovering after holding the ZR button to ink while moving forward. That's not the part of this weapon that's not good. I don't care about either of those things. This doesn't change anything at all. Time before ink starts recovering after holding it to ink by moving. I guess, like, if you're running around with it, then you're going to be able to start recovering ink from that sooner. That's not how people play the paintbrush, though. They shark with it. This doesn't impact its playstyle at all. Dapples. Movement speed while firing? Oh, but while walking and firing. Okay. I was like, you don't move while you're in turret mode in that weapon. Okay, so this just buffs... This buffs new players who like to walk and shoot with it because it does damage really fast, and they don't have to aim quite as precisely, because if either of the reticles are over the top, they'll at least get consistent damage out of it. This is buffing that playstyle, and that's about all. This will not have a huge impact on the way that it is played at a top level. I am surprised that they're buffing it, honestly, because Japan has always had a much higher regard for this weapon than the West has. I've seen it put in, like, high tier on tier lists. And, like, I don't know why they've been so hyped about it. I don't really see it being a high tier weapon. But the fact that Nintendo, in particular, decided to buff it, when often they're more swayed by the state of the game in Japan, that's interesting. Okay, well, that's it for the main weapons. So, no touching pencil. Honestly, I don't know. I think the main weapon of pencil, the big thing that I would want to do if I were to touch it would be to decrease the amount it paints. I don't think, like, the main weapon's firepower is overpowering. The problem is that it can do that sort of firepower and also just be painting the map better than anything else in the game at the same time. And that it's able to basically be two weapons in one in that way. So, I don't know. There are ways that this patch turns out okay without that. And a lot of these buffs are good ideas, at least. Like, they may not be enough, but they're at least in the right direction. Like, they're picking a good number of weapons that, like, could probably use the attention. S-Blast is a lot closer to viability than I think most of these, but also it hasn't been getting used very much because there's just Range Blaster now. So, getting it a little bit closer to feeling like a Range Blaster is probably nice for people who basically want to play the same way but get multiple kits. Okay. Big Bubbler. Reduced damage dealt to the inner device and top section by a problem. So, Big Bubbler is just tankier now. Harder to shred. I don't really like Big Bubbler as a special. I think that it's more just kind of annoying. It doesn't feel fun to play with, and it doesn't feel fun to play against. It just feels like a bullet sponge. So it's like, I don't like this particular buff in that I feel like this just makes it more annoying. But also, this does make it better. Does it make it good? We'll see. And we'll see, like, if this is just across the board or if certain damage multipliers have different impacts on it. Because the patch notes can often be kind of deceptive in the way that they're presented. But that isn't bad for Big Bubbler users. It, might have a niche on zones. We've been seeing a lot of double Zuka, and you often will see Big Bubbler show up when Zuka is at its absolute strongest so that it can block Zuka shots. Also might just see it for blocking stuff on the zone. So, not a bad thing, I think. Splatter color screen gets a damage buff. This is like... It makes it more punishing to run through, I guess. But it's really hard to actually deliberately damage someone with the screen. You have to literally have it activate right on top of them. So it's very avoidable. Also, unfortunate that there are no changes to the accessibility. Like, I feel like the outcry about it just didn't reach Nintendo after the first change. They were just like, nope, we're done. It's good. It's fine. No problems. Triple Splashdown gets 2 changes. Reduced the amount of time it takes for the player in Inkfist to start dropping, so that comes out faster, but decreased the radius of the 60 damage explosion. So it's faster, but the outer edges of it are a little smaller. Unclear whether that changes the lethal radius. Like, did they change the radius of the whole thing so that the 60 damage is just closer to it? Or does it just mean that the splash damage doesn't go out as far from the lethal radius and the lethal radius is the same? That's tough to say. But this makes it harder to shoot down. So that's good for the splashdown weapons. You know, Nautilus players are happy for that for sure. Kraken Royale. Wait, made it so that super jumping to an ally using Kraken Royale will super jump to the location where that ally started using... Let's go! They stopped Kraken Cheese! Kraken Cheese is out of the game now! You have to start the Kraken from the basket to be able to give them the jump. They did it! Oh my god! This is so huge. This is one of the best things that they have changed in a patch since they nerfed Splash. Clam Blitz is fixed. That is such a good change. Hats off to them. Oh my goodness. Oh, that's super cool. All right. That by itself, already a bit of a W patch, I have to say. I'm really happy to see that. Okay, points for special. They buffed Neo Splash? Why? Oh, these are going to be perplexing, aren't they? So, I mean, Neo Splash is very, very niche, and it's not because of its special output. Its special output is fine. This thing paints like crazy. It's literally one of the best painting weapons in the entire game. Every aspect of it paints. Its bomb paints. Its special paints. Its main weapon is one of the best painters. Like, this is the weapon of choice for sneaking a sharking weapon into place, because every aspect of the kit helps it do that. Its paint helps it do that. Its bombs, the explosions are a smoke screen, and they're a big smoke screen that blocks your vision. The tri-strikes are a really easily placeable smoke screen, and so if you stagger them, you can make that smoke screen last for a long time. So getting more strikes, like, that wasn't an issue for this thing. You didn't need that. But it's only 10 points. It's not going to make a huge difference. Zap goes to 170p. You get chumps really easily on this. So, I mean, you're going to spam them out real quick. Are they still going to have that much of an impact? Probably not. But that is a very fast special. And that's something to watch in case chumps get strong. Carbon has a 160 Zipcaster. It already had 170. But now it's 160. The problem is people are just not picking Carbon Roller. People are picking the Carbon Deco because of the main weapon burst bomb combo that this one doesn't have. So, I mean, if you need Zipcasters really fast, at this point, I don't care that it's a roller. You're getting it real quick. So, I guess that might be worth considering if you're trying to spam Zipcasters. But, I mean, the Stamper still exists, so it's probably not what you're going for. Gold Dynamo Roller gets faster chumps. Fine, same thinking as NZAP 89. Chumps are just, like, just undesirable enough right now that people aren't really interested in using them. Um, and I think like people will definitely experiment because if they think they can get anything out of chumps, they're so cheap right now. They're so easy to get that like people will probably look for them. But I don't know. I'd still probably rather have Zukas. Splat Charger and all the other variants goes to 190 for Inkvac. Inkvac is in an awkward place right now because there are there are a lot of situations where you look at an Inkvac and you're like, wow, that just completely shut the enemy team down. There was nothing the enemy team could have done about that. And then you look at how it's used in like top level play and stuff, and you're like, I don't feel like these teams are getting put into those positions ever. I don't feel like I'm seeing an Inkvac, a single Inkvac that feels like that when these players try to counterplay it. I think that, and this is something we've seen a lot of, especially Japanese teams, try to run it at top level, and I just am not convinced that it's going to have the impact at that level. It's still strong if you get the right circumstances for it, but the if, I think, hurts it a lot. And it's the if that makes me look at decreasing the points per special and go, that changes literally nothing because this is just too situational a special already. Use it on zones, sure, it'll cap the zone for you basically for free on like a lot of the zones in the game, which is kind of a weird gimmicky reason to run it, but like, hey, if it works, it works, and like, I'm all for making some weapons more viable than they would otherwise be just because you can run them in zones for that kind of a reason. But I don't think that the design of the special is in a fantastic place in terms of competitive play right this second. It's like compelling as an idea, and I definitely want to see them work with it and try to fix it up because I think it could be very interesting. But right now, I don't know that this makes a difference. Splatterscope gets the same buff. Dapple Doolies now has 170p Tacticooler. It still has no way to poke. And is this even getting Tacticooler faster than a Snipe Rider is yet? I still don't know if that's true. The painting range on the Dapple Doolies is nothing, and it's very difficult to find safe space to paint. The pencil can see something that's unpainted half a mile away and be like, I can paint that. And that counts for a lot. So I honestly think that this still doesn't even beat the cooler output of the pencil. So I don't think that's going to make a huge difference. I think one thing, now that I'm thinking about it, they buffed the running movement on the Dapples. That is something that impacts its ability to paint. So combining that with this, that feels like something that gets a theory crafter very interested before they realize that wasn't ever the fundamental problem with the weapon. But it also, there's this really tiny off chance that maybe this suddenly just gets cooler in like 5 seconds now, and that's something people have to consider. I don't think that that's going to change enough, but it would be funny if that were the case. It'd be funny if they accidentally broke that. Oh, they nerfed the special output of the splatter shot. It's a small nerf. I don't know that changes all that much, but this is a good thing. They're recognizing that this special is a problem, and they're giving it a little tweak. That doesn't change the meta, I don't think, but it's nice. And they did the same for Squeezer. Awesome. That weapon is not going to get as many Zukas anymore. This hurts the Squeezer a lot more because the Squeezer's a lot worse at painting than the Splatter Shot is. Splatter Shot can like put an extra 10p on the ground. It'll be fine, but Squeezer 220 is a lot. Like 220 is already very high, but it's on a weapon that like routinely paints way less than the other weapons around it. So like it's getting more and more to where you're playing Squeezer more for the main weapon than for anything else. It's becoming more and more of a thing that like feels, it's getting closer to being niche. It's still a monster, but This is a step in the right direction. Range Blaster, literally the last thing that is making the Range Blaster strong is the Wave Breaker. It's all been about the main weapon this whole time, so I don't really see 210p being that huge for it. It's kind of annoying, honestly, because, like, come on, let it have its Wave Breaker. Let it make people play the Mario Party minigame. Who cares? Snipe Rider, 10 points. Wait, so it was at 200, and now it's at 210. Do you get a 210p cooler out of Snipe Rider faster than you get a 170p cooler out of Dapple Doolies? 40p's a decent amount, but also it might still be faster on Snipe Rider. I think, like, it's literally a difference of one extra shot, maybe. Because I think with Snipe Rider, it was like 2 full charges and then like 3 more shots, I think. So maybe now it's 4 more shots or something like that. That seems like it would math. Maybe it doesn't even make a difference. Maybe if you're like painting on unpainted turf, it just wouldn't make a difference. That probably doesn't change its viability, but it is, again, a step in the right direction. There have been a lot of steps in the right direction here. They're just very, very small steps, and it's unclear whether it's going to add up to a different metagame. Yep, they knew about Kraken Cheese. Anything else? Just some bug fixes. Okay, so this is definitely not the worst patch that we have seen. I think that the special changes, at least, are some of the most reasonable that we've ever had. There aren't any points for special changes on this list, except for, I mean, I don't feel like this is a nothing change to me. Like, I don't feel like that really makes a difference, but there aren't any here that I'm just, like, baffled by, that I'm like, this is the most bizarre decision I've ever seen kind of thing. Because there's been one of those on every one of these patches so far, but this time, not really. These are some of the heavy hitters in the metagame right now that, you know, it's maybe not the Range Blaster in this particular way, but like otherwise every single one of these needed to be taken down a peg. And they didn't take it down quite as much as I think they might want to, but it's, again, exactly the right thing to be nerfing, I think. And then all of these, you know, haven't been seeing a ton of use, so what the heck, throw them a bone. And they did the same thing with a lot of the main weapon buffs. All of those are pretty nice. Even if they might not change a lot right now, it's like something good for those players who are already on those weapons to have. Paintbrush is probably the saddest one of them, because I really don't think that changes a thing about that weapon. Maybe I'm wrong. You know, Paintbrush users, let me know. I think this right here turns it from a very meh, this doesn't really change anything patch to they literally saved competitive Clam Blitz. They made it so that competitive Clam Blitz does not have to worry about that really obnoxious strategy just flipping a game anymore. That you have to have an honest push into the basket. You cannot just play around this special. The special is going to be used the way it was intended to be used. So this, I think, makes the patch cross the line into W territory. I still think we're probably going to see a good amount of Zuka and a good amount of Pencil. I'm very, very lightly positive on this patch, and that it's mostly carried by the Kraken change, but that basically everything else is like, this is like 0.1% better a game now for having all of this stuff. When I was looking at the bans that people were passing around a forum about, like a Google form, asking like, hey, would you like to see X, Y, or Z thing banned from competitive play? This was the one where I was like, you know, I don't want Kraken banned in Clam Blitz, but like, if we could just have a gentleman's agreement not to do crack and cheese. I think that would go a long way. And here we go. We don't need to have that anymore. It fixed all of those problems from the Google form right there. I cannot, celebrate this enough. This is great. Everything else, whatever. But let's go play some Clam Blitz together, huh?